There we are. We
Is
are
it?
live.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh,
it is
yeah.
live.
It's right there. It says live on the thing.
Yeah, it does. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 38 of the TechForge podcast. I am your host, Dynamo Ned, and I am joined once again by my ever faithful co-hosts, Jason and Hunter.
Meh.
Yo.
So, plenty of tech news to discuss this week. Let me just consult my show notes here. Let's see. This first part said, this is the part where Ned says meow. Okay, who put this in the show notes?
Me, maybe?
Well, fine. Meow.
Meow. That's a strong meow.
All right, we do have quite a few bits of tech news this week, so we will try to move quickly. We'll start, though, with the one that everybody has been talking about all over the internet, and that is that we now have images of the environment at a black hole's event horizon. This comes from Ars Technica, but you've likely seen the photo plastered all over your preferred social media, whether that be Facebook or Twitter, that using data from radio telescopes, we've been able to construct an image of the environment around a black hole for the very first time.
Yeah. Wasn't it some insane amount of storage space needed? To
5
construct an image?
petabytes.
Like, yeah,
How much?
5 petabytes, which is 5,000 terabytes.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that nice stack of hard drives that the person had in front of her.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah, 5
yeah.
petabytes of data is no joke.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking, even if you're working with 4 terabyte drives, you're talking over 250 drives.
This is one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen in my life.
I would tend to agree. Basically, this black hole that has been the center of all of this big announcement is a supermassive one at the center of a galaxy M87, which is approximately 55 million light years away.
Wow.
And so the reason we're even able to see this thing at all is that this supermassive black hole is pulling in this material and then ejecting out what are essentially streams of photons and material. And they're getting temporarily caught on the edge of this black hole's event horizon, and that's what we're able to make the image of.
Wow.
And that's what causes this big bright orange ring that we've seen in all these pictures. Of course, you all have likely seen it at this point, but I'll share it just because, this image that has become so famous.
It almost looks like a blurry image of the evil eye of Sauron, you know what I mean?
Well, we can't know for sure, but if we start hearing about hobbits going to Isengard,
yeah, that's man, that is just very impressive. That's an awesome image.
Yeah.
And of course, there's been a number of people featured from the team, but this took a team of over 200 plus people to put together and to work out over, I think it was like 5 years of data.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And I think it was 8 satellites around the world to make a virtual telescope.
Wow.
Yes.
Eventually they'll, with innovation, eventually they'll get to a point where they create an automated workflow on a system that can take care of this.
Well, I mean, they had several million lines of, or they had over a million, I should say, lines of code in this program.
Wow.
And The thing is, the original measurements that were used to make this image were taken back 2 years ago in April of 2017.
Wow.
That's how long it has taken to make a program to actually crunch this data and produce a visible image.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though this is 2-year-old data, it's just now we're starting to see results and see this resultant image.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing the initial image and the fact that it's this big, bright orange ring around a black center, I started to wonder if it wasn't just an AMD promotional stunt for Zen 2. But
right.
But
there was a meme about that.
Oh yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I saw that. But black holes exist, and now, even though technically they're not supposed to be visible, we can at least see the stuff around them. And that is, that may not be PC tech, but it is still very impressive technology at the very least.
Oh yeah.
All right, next on the agenda. This is something we don't normally look at, but I think this is a case all three of us have had our eye on for a while.
Oh yeah.
And we've praised Cooler Master's Masterbox Q300L in the past as a very solid entry-level micro ATX case that you can get for right around $40. Well, Cooler Master decided to take it up a notch with the Q500L and make a compact ATX case, meaning that this is a case that allows you to use a full ATX motherboard, and it is only slightly larger than the Q300L.
Not only that, but you can fit, good-sized air coolers in this thing.
Exactly.
So
coolers like Cooler Master's own Hyper 212 Black Edition.
Which that's about as tall as some of the big monster like Noctuas and the Be Quiets and stuff out there. The height is very similar.
So for those of you who are not familiar with the case we're talking about, this is a photo from PC Perspective. You can see here. This is what the case looks like. And believe it or not, even though that looks like maybe a slightly oversized micro ATX case or maybe even a mini ITX case, that's a full ATX motherboard in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's extremely impressive what they were able to do.
So to finally have an ATX form factor case that's not much bigger than a mini ITX or micro ATX case is quite the accomplishment.
And I mean, looks aside, it's a really nice looking case, but looks aside, there's a fair bit of innovation in this thing because you can move that IO panel pops off. You can move it around the edge if you like, and then the glass can change with it. You can also mount the power supply to the front, the bottom, the top. There's all kinds of creative potential that's in this case.
Yeah, this is another photo from PC Perspective where they show that's with the side panel off. You can see the full ATX. I think they have a Gigabyte Z390 board in there with a full-size GTX 1070 from EVGA, 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, and a Cooler Master Hyper 212 cooler. And that thing in the front, that's the power supply. So you can see this is a radically different shape for a case. And I love it. I just love it.
Yeah, I love it too, man. And there's lots of options for I/O. There's lots of mounting options for 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch drives.
Yes.
I mean, What's that?
It can fit either 2 full 3.5-inch drives, or 4 2.5-inch drives, or a mix of 1 3.5-inch and 2.5-inch drives in the back.
And the ventilation is fantastic in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the dust filtration is pretty impressive too.
Yeah, because each side panel is basically a plate of perforated steel, but the design that you saw on the front is actually the dust filter that attaches magnetically. So if you ever need to clean the case, you literally just peel off the front panel that is just a magnetic dust filter, run it through some water, dry it off, put it back on, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the best part of this case is the price point. This case is only $59.99.
That's crazy, man. That's absolutely
And
nuts.
also, I just looked it up on both Newegg and Amazon, and it sold out both places.
So yeah, unfortunately, we can't include it in our deals for the week because it is sold out. But no, when it comes back available, this is one to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh wait, on Amazon it says only 14 in stock soon. So there's 14 left on Amazon.
And we're recording this about 12 hours before you'll see it, ladies and gentlemen. So,
So it's probably
by the
gonna be
time you
sold
take
out.
a look, who knows?
Oh, I gotta share this image. Somebody water cooled inside of it.
Oh, please do share it.
Oh, this thing's sexy, man. I'll put it here in the notes.
Okay.
Come on. Or not. 1 second. Oh, it's right from the Cooler Master website. Here. Why don't you share that? If you scroll down the page, you'll see it. They've got what looks like a 240 mil rad on top. It's either 280 or 240. I'm guessing it's 240.
Yeah, okay. So let me share this screen.
It's just a CPU loop, but it does show that water cooling is possible.
Okay, here we go. So this is straight from Cooler Master's website, and you can see they have a full water cooling setup in here for the CPU block. They've got the block here with custom tube up to the radiator, and you can see they went around back and rerouted it around down here to the reservoir.
Yep. It's looks like it's soft tubing, but it still looks really good. Oh, they've got Trident Z memory in there.
Yes, they do.
Oh, that's impressive.
And what looks like an Asus Hero Formula motherboard.
Yep.
So this is a versatile case. We'd encourage you to go read the PC Perspective article because they very thoroughly show how the various mountings work, discuss the price point, temperatures, and it's a solid product. PC Perspective gave it their gold award. So they think for the value, it is an excellent value for the money. And to be honest, this will probably be a case one of my next builds will be in when it comes back.
Yeah. Oh,
because I've been looking for a case that gives me the portability of a mini ITX case like the BitPhoenix Prodigy, which I had a build in until not too long ago, but lets me use full ATX form factor motherboards.
Okay, so you can put a 240 mil red on the top and a 120 in the back. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's some pretty creative ways you can actually get, if you mod it, there's some creative ways you can actually mount hardware, like the hardware externally. So,
Right. Yes, I remember the good old days of having the tubes come out of the back of your PC and then mounting a bracket for your radiator.
yeah. Yeah.
All right. So this week, we kind of restructured the show notes a little bit. And since a lot of our focus is on PC hardware, this week we're going to take a look at separating them by the three major competitors in the PC hardware space. And that is AMD, Nvidia, and Intel. And so first, let's jump into the AMD news.
Hey, I took a dump right before the podcast, man. I feel great.
Too much information.
TMI, TMI.
So this first little bit of news is about a interesting little leak on Twitter from, you guessed it, 2Mapasack. Although the article here is from TechSpot. AMD's next-gen PlayStation Xbox chip moves closer to its final version. So we talked about several weeks back about the Gonzalo APU. And using the name decoder for the engineering sample at the time, we were able to determine that it was likely an 8-core chip running 8 physical cores at a 1 gigahertz base clock and a 3.2 gigahertz boost clock. Now, and we were also able to determine that it was a very early engineering sample, that it was the engineering sample number started with a 2, meaning that it was an early testing chip, meaning it hasn't even made it into early qualification rounds. Well, now we have a new part number from 2Mapasack for the same Gonzalo APU, but this time it starts with Z. And the Z at the start is important because it indicates that this is a qualification sample, meaning that it is the stage just before it goes into engineering samples for production testing and then finally into actual production. So if this is a qualification sample, it means this is not that far from being ready for production.
Nice.
And what's additionally interesting about this is the numbers indicate that we have some improvements to the chip as a whole. First off, the actual code number, I'm going to read this off, is ZG16702AE8JB2 _32/10/18_13F8. Basically, what we can determine from that is that the base clock of this new qualification sample has been upped 600 megahertz to 1.6 gigahertz. And that otherwise, the specs are largely unchanged. It's still 8 physical cores with a boost clock of 3.2 gigahertz, and it features a Navi 10 Lite GPU component that now apparently is running at a faster 1.8 gigahertz.
Interesting.
Versus the previous example running at 1 gigahertz.
So this would indicate that pretty much the design is good, and now they're at a point where they're just kind of fiddling around with tuning it.
They're optimizing for power, yes.
Yeah. They're seeing what they can get away with at different frequencies and loads.
And remember, the Gonzalo APU is supposedly the chip that is going to appear in the PlayStation 5 and the next generation of the Xbox.
Which is going to be using, well, it's rumored to be using Navi as the GPU and Zen of some fashion for the CPU. So
Correct.
this will be, and I've heard leaks as high as 14 teraflops in performance. Now that does seem a bit high, but it's possible. I mean, that's around Vega 56, I want to say, potentially. So,
well, a console that could deliver Vega 56 performance would certainly be impressive.
oh yeah. Well, they're probably going to have a big bank of DDR6 RAM, for the actual console
Would not
itself.
surprise me. So the big question at this point is, can we expect to see Gonzalo this year in the PS5 and Xbox Scarlet, or is it going to be next year?
If it is this year, it's going to be late.
It probably would be late this year. The question really comes down to what's going to happen around Computex and E3.
Right.
Are Sony and Microsoft going to announce their next generation consoles? Who knows?
Well, either way, this is all pointing up to a huge year for AMD. Huge.
And speaking of which, our next story comes from WCCF Tech. AMD's Holding Partners Summit is on April the 23rd, where 7nm and Navi are both on the agenda.
Supposedly, the holding partners are having to sign NDAs.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing. If the holding partners, which remember these are investors essentially, if they're having to sign NDAs about what they're seeing, that means that something that they are seeing
is very important.
Is going to be something they don't want out in the public yet.
Right.
Of course, we will likely see leaks. We will likely see something leak out into the public. It's just a question of what.
Well, I tend to agree with another tech tuber, not an Apple fan or whatever that guy is. He's of the belief that what's that?
Is it Lewis Rossman?
I'd have to go back and look. He's Irish. He often rants. He often rants about Nvidia, but he's of the belief that by the end of this month or early to mid next month, we'll just start getting lots and lots of leaks, which I would tend to agree with because it's getting close to Computex.
Well, it would not surprise me to see them announce it at an event like Computex, like Gamescom.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we already know that AMD is going to be giving a keynote at the opening of Computex this year. And the plans are out there. They're not confirmed, but we have information that they're going to be launching their 7nm CPUs and GPUs then.
We're getting ready for some rumble in the tumble, folks. There's going to be, we'll have Navi. We'll have pretty soon here. We'll have some
Ryzen
Intel
3000.
parts. Yeah, we'll have Ryzen 3000. We'll have some Intel GPUs here before too long, and we're going to see some GPU wars here in the not too distant future. It's going to be exciting. It'll be nice to finally see graphics cards down to a decent price point again.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. So, next thing that we have on the agenda for tonight, another leak. This is another 2-Mapasac leak. So, again, take it with a bit of salt. But he leaked a set of new embedded APUs/CPUs that are Ryzen-based called the RX 8125, RX 8120, and A9 9820. So apparently, these were all discovered in the 3D Mark database.
Ah.
And they are under the code name Cato, SOC. CATO.
I wonder what these are for.
Well, it's believed that the RX 8125 and 8120 are probably refreshes of their current embedded APUs, but it's the A9 9820 that is a bit more unusual. Now, we know the current A9 processors, some of them are Zen-based, but a lot of the older A-series Athlons were excavator-based.
Which was the last of the pile driver architecture updates.
Exactly.
So
all we know about the A9 9820 at the moment is from the 3D Mark database leak, which is that is a hold on. That it sports 8 cores, it lacks SMT, it's clocked at 2.3 gigahertz with a boost of 2.395 gigahertz, and features a Radeon RX 350 graphics processor, whatever that means.
well, if they're low power embedded devices, the clock speeds make sense. As does the lack of SMT. So they're interesting parts. You know, they're low clock speed. They're going to have Radeon graphics embedded. They're lots of logical processors that are physical. I'm just trying to think of what the use cases are for these.
Well, if these are designed to be embedded SoCs, they're likely going to wind up in things like digital signage or kiosks or maybe even powering the automated ordering at your local McDonald's.
That's a lot of processing power for that, though.
I mean, even potentially this could be, most of the time when we think about digital signage, we think about something like, the signs, those refreshing signs that you see at your local McDonald's. But you have to remember, digital signage also includes billboard size signs that have to also be driven by an embedded SoC. So for something that large and with that high a resolution, you're going to need a powerful embedded solution.
Right. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
So I am wondering when we will see products featuring these SoCs. But considering they're already listed in the AVNet database as parts available, and AVNet is one of the best listing databases in the world for embedded solutions, I have a feeling we will likely see them soon.
Yeah, I'm guessing 2 to 3 months tops, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
And so with that, we conclude our AMD news. So let's move straight to the green team with the Nvidia GeForce GTX 1650 spotted in a leaked Acer laptop slide. Of course, we also have had other leaks of the GTX 1650, so this isn't a huge surprise, but this is the first official confirmation we have about it.
Yeah, it was just going to be a small matter of time. You know, we had the 60 Ti, then we had the 60. I mean, it's just a matter of time before they release the 50 part. So,
yeah.
The leaked slide in particular, I'll bring it up and share it since we want to know what the slide in question is. This was at a Taiwanese conference, so obviously it's in Chinese.
I have to question putting a 144 hertz panel next to a 50 part. Now I can understand the 60 Ti with the 144 hertz panel, but not a 50.
It does seem a little unusual to me as well, but who knows?
I don't know. It's kind of meh, honestly.
So we still don't have a release date for the 1650. There are some initial rumors pointing toward April the 22nd as a release date, but we don't have anything official. However, Video Cards with a Z did get a leaked photo of the Zotac GeForce GTX 1650.
Nice.
Let's show some of those photos because we can.
Huh.
So here we go. The Zotac GeForce GTX 1650 requires no power connectors. Of course, we kind of come to expect that in a 50 series part for it to consume 75 watts of power or less, in which case I'm curious what type of performance we'll see in the 1650 relative to its 1050 counterpart and relative to the others in the stack.
Well, so trying to remember what the 60 level part, I think it performs on par with the RX 590, right? So I'm guessing the 50 would probably be in the neighborhood of a 570 maybe, or 580, somewhere around there.
If it could achieve that kind of performance, that would be pretty impressive.
It would be.
The 1660 Ti was on the level of the 590, the RX 590.
I thought that the 1660 Ti was right around the performance level of like a 1070 or a Vega 56 stock.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then the 60 was pretty close, but it was right around RX 590.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So yeah, if they can get a 1650 that uses 75 watts of power or less to get the same performance as, say, an RX 570 or an RX 580, that would be pretty impressive.
That's what I'm thinking. That's not a bad looking part.
Yeah.
So 1650, kind of expected, kind of inevitable. This next one, though, from Nvidia, I don't know what they're thinking with this part. This comes from PC Builders PC Builders Club, which is a German website, but they also have an English version of their site as well. There was a leak of a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2070 Ti with 7.5 gigabytes of VRAM. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. You want to have something in the stack between the RTX 2070 and the 2080. But if this is... If this benchmark leak is legit, it boggles my mind why they would cut down the 2080 in this way, in this particular way.
Well, I mean, and you've mentioned it before, but I'm just kind of theorizing here, but I'm assuming the way they cut it down was they disabled a fraction of one of their streaming modules or whatever they call them to get that 0.5 gigabyte of RAM count. I'm assuming that's what they did, which is it's just an odd number. I mean, it's essentially sitting between two cards that have 8 gigabyte frame buffers in its own product stack. So I just don't understand why they would do that. That's just very odd to me.
Well, the current postulation on all of it is basically that this is Nvidia prepping something to fight whatever they think their AMD rival is going to release sometime in the summer.
Mm.
You know, the whole reason the 1070 Ti existed in the first place, which the 1070 Ti was a mistake. I still maintain it was a mistake.
Yeah. It's an interesting part, though, but yeah, it was just didn't make sense. Just so that they could beat the Vega 56.
Yeah, that was the only reason it existed. Because the Vega 56 soundly beat the 1070, but didn't quite match the 1080. So they released what was essentially a detuned 1080 with a couple of SMs disabled, but you couldn't factory overclock it because then it would actually be faster than a 1080.
Right. And a lot of the beefed up PCB and cooling variants of the 1070 Ti could match and surpass the lower end 1080s. So yeah. But still, I just don't understand this. This just baffles me. They do some weird things sometimes.
So this potential RTX 2070 Ti, where this came from, there was a entry found in the user benchmark database that matched most of the specifications of an RTX 2070, 2080 class card.
Mm-hmm.
It was 6% faster than the RTX 2070, but it had a processor clock, a GPU clock of 1,590 megahertz and a very weird 7.5 gigabytes of VRAM with a memory clock of 3,150 megahertz.
Which I'm not that far on. I don't know that much about DDR6 clock rates with Turing. So, I mean, you would multiply that by 4, and then you get your DDR6 theoretical clock speed. So, what is that?
Roughly 12,400 megahertz effective.
12,600.
Yeah, something like that.
So, okay. That clock speed's interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I really don't know what to make of this particular leak.
Most of the Turing cards in the RTX 2070 to 2080 range auto boost themselves up to like 1.8 or 1.9 gigahertz anyway, with decent cooling. So I'd have to assume that a 2070 Ti would also boost up that high.
And we'll have to see if such a card exists, and if it does, if it performs to that level. Honestly, I hope it does, because if I really grow tired of Nvidia's constant practice of releasing what are essentially slightly defective or somewhat broken cards at a price premium to fit a particular hole, as they see it in their stack, but where there really isn't a hole.
There's not a hole. The 2070 and 2080 are far enough apart, both in performance and in price, that they make a certain logical sense. There's not a problem.
And
I don't understand it.
And we've seen this before. I mean, particularly at the lower end of the stack, but we've seen this at the upper end of the stack with the 1070 Ti. We're seeing it now with how close in performance the 1660, the 1660 Ti, and the RTX 2060 are when you don't factor in ray tracing.
Mm-hmm.
In traditional rasterized titles, the performance difference between the RTX 2060 and the GTX 1660 Ti doesn't really justify the price difference between them.
I'd agree to that.
Because, yes, it is $70 more for the RTX 2060, but we see that's roughly, a 25% increase in price for what is at most a 15% increase in performance.
Really, yeah, you're paying for your part of that is paying for the performance, but also for the features.
Yeah,
Right.
you're paying the RTX tax.
Right. But it's still the cheapest RTX card they make. Okay. Meh. Meh, meh, meh.
Meh.
All right.
And, you know, the article seems to speak to why they're doing it. And they mention the Radeon 7, but the Radeon 7 is pretty much at the same performance level as the 2080. So,
Unless they're hoping to release, like the 1070 Ti, a card that has similar performance to the 2080 but costs less, which we know how well that worked out.
right?
I mean, yes, there was a huge buy-off of 1070 Ti's when the RTX 2080 was the only card available,
Yeah.
but eh. Let's
Which,
continue to Intel's news for the week.
fair enough.
All right, so Intel does have a few interesting things going on. The first of which is, you remember that Core i9 9990XE that we talked about that was only going to be available by secret auction?
That 56 core monster thingy?
No. This was the weird 14 core i9 that was
Oh, yeah. I remember this thing now. Yeah.
had a 255 watt TDP.
Right.
So this chip was originally going to be available only by private auction, but now they have finally launched it in the retail channel. Right now, it is available from the German retailer caseking.de for €2,999, roughly $3,380. And it's also a part of their high-end KingMod CKPC-843 gaming and streaming PC, which is available for the low price of €12,999 and 90 euro dollar cents.
Euro dollar cents. There's no sense in that thing, man. It looks pretty. That's it.
Or roughly $14,650.
It looks pretty.
My
And
first,
go ahead.
my car was cheaper than that.
I'm a little jealous. So it's pretty, and I'm jealous of some of the tube bends in this thing. It's very nice, nicely built.
Oh, it is definitely a beautiful system, but so just a refresher, the Core i9 9990XE is a 14-core, 28-thread part with 19.25 megabytes of L3 cache, 44 PCIe 3.0 lanes, and a 255-watt TDP. It is a 14-nanometer chip with a 4 gigahertz base clock, a 5.1 gigahertz single-core boost clock, and a 5 gigahertz all-core boost clock. So 14 cores at 5 gigahertz.
So there's technically two water-cooled computers integrated into this. There's an ITX system, and it's primarily responsible for streaming and video capture. So that is interesting. I wonder why you would want to video capture when you've got this crazy monstrosity of a CPU in there. You know what I mean?
The argument could be made. The original title of the article was that it retails for $2,735, and where that particular price came from was from Puget Systems. Basically, they said that their system, that as a system builder, they paid roughly $2,300 for their sample.
Hmm.
And when you deduct from the remember, as part of the European Union, in Germany, they have what's called a 19% value added tax,
Oh,
which
geez.
means the tax is factored into the price of the actual product. In which case, if you take that out, that's where they're getting the $2,735 price for the CPU.
That's a pretty high-end tax right there.
Well, unlike in the United States, they do not have a sales tax. Instead, they have a value-added tax.
Ah,
And at each point in the process, that tax is added on.
gotcha.
And so I'd encourage you to take a look at the system. I can show them real quick. Oh, it looks like we lost Hunter.
What? Oh, Hunter.
So caseking.de, here's the photo of the system that contains the Core i9-9990XE. Here's a closer look at some of the tube bins.
Yeah, those
are very pretty.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
And you were talking about the smaller capture system at the bottom. There's a photo of that, which, according to Tom's Hardware here, it contains a Core i5-9600K hexa-core processor on a Asus ROG Strix Z390 mini ITX motherboard, 16 gigs of Crucial Ballistics, DDR4 2666, and a Crucial P1 NVMe 500 gigabyte M.2 SSD. And of course, they have an Elgato 4K 60 Pro installed as well.
Mm-hmm. That is a monster system right there.
So, if you have roughly $14,000 lying around,
Yeah,
you can have a system just like that one.
sign me up. Thank you, no thanks.
Speaking of expensive parts from Intel, this one's from TechSpot. We've talked about in the past the potential for Intel being a persistent memory technology and as a replacement for DRAM, as it's a non-volatile form of memory. Well, Intel is finally debuting Optane persistent memory for the data center. Hey, glad to have you back, Hunter.
Thanks.
And it's starting at $850 for a 128 gigabyte stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. The tech is cool, but man, that price is crazy high.
And the price for a 256 gigabyte stick is $2,461.
I'm leaning towards, there's going to be people who's going to buy this. But I don't know because that's really expensive.
I mean,
Well, I'm sure there's valid use cases for it.
well, the whole point of Optane persistent memory is, of course, right now it's engineered for the data center environment, for the enterprise.
Yeah.
To basically act as a level 4 cache of sorts, as a low latency, high speed storage option in a memory form factor. So that, if a mission critical system fails, because it is non-volatile memory, everything that was in memory when the moment the system crashed is still there.
Oh, yeah. I was looking at the wrong article.
And when you actually put it into perspective, I guess the same article states that 128 gig or 256 gig memory sticks are priced at $4,326 for the 128 gigabyte stick and $24,000 for the 256 gigabyte stick. So when you compare that price that it sounds high to that's a huge discount. So
Right.
Yeah.
This is Intel having essentially using Optane as a loss leader to get people into the technology early so that they see its advantages, and then you have ecosystem capture.
Right. I mean, they're essentially creating a new market with this type.
Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see what use cases this fills. Honestly, I'm very interested in this because this creates a new type of computing. So it's innovative. It's pretty cool.
Of course, that's not the only thing Intel is doing with Optane. They have also released specifications for a new Optane memory H10. Now, this is a new SSD in the M.2 factor that, much like the previous Optane accelerators that are designed to be used as a cache for a traditional spinning Rust hard drive, these new Optane memory H10 are designed kind of with the same idea, but they are being marketed as SSDs.
So they're combining Optane memory with the 660p
QLC 3D NAND.
Interesting. 10 portion will act. Okay, so the Optane memory will act as a cache for the QLC.
Exactly.
Okay. Where normally they have some sort of DRAM as caching.
Well, and we've seen this kind of thing before, slightly differently with other TLC and QLC SSDs, where they will use a SLC cache. Sorry, we're throwing around those acronyms like everyone knows what they are. So with SSDs, the type of NAND flash you use can record a certain number of bits per cell. If it records 1 bit per cell, it is single layer cell, or SLC NAND. If it records 2 bits per cell, that's called MLC, or multi-layer cell, multiple layer cell. If you can record 3 bits, that is triple layer cell, and 4 bits is quad layer cell. So QLC NAND has the highest data density because it can record 4 bits per memory cell, but it also means it has the lowest endurance, and it also is the most prone to slowdowns because of having to rewrite multiple bits of information, which is why typically you see a QLC NAND flash SSD have a cache of SLC memory that it uses to speed up day-to-day operations. Only in this case, Intel has decided we're going to use Optane 3D Crosspoint memory for that cache instead.
Well, if the performance is accurate, it's pretty impressive. They're claiming 2 gigabytes a second for the cache for sequential reads, but there's 2 stacks of it. So combined, they're saying it's theoretically possible for up to 2.4 gigabytes a second. So that's impressive. Based on the design, I'm guessing this is looking to be maybe a mid-tier type part.
They're mostly aiming at laptops at the moment.
Okay.
The H10 bundles are going to be OEM only, and the recommended hardware to use with them are the 300 series platform controller hub. So the 310, the 310C, B360, H370, Z370, Z390, something along those lines, and an 8th gen or higher Core U series mobile processor. But again, that's just what they're initially launching with.
Right.
It would not surprise me to see this on the desktop in not too long a time.
Optane drivers required a Kaby Lake or better, so it wouldn't surprise me.
So
Cool.
And this was originally written, this was a non-tech writing about it. And they did say at the very end that their Optane Memory H10 review sample arrived the day they wrote this article, which was on the 10th. So it was literally the day before we're recording this. So they're probably in the middle of reviewing the drive as we speak.
Mm-hmm. So we should expect this fairly soon, I think. That's kind of neat.
I would tend to agree.
I really like the Intel 660p. I'm a big fan of that drive, mainly because you get an NVMe for cheap, you know? And it's a nice drive. I mean, yeah, it's got its drawbacks, but overall, it's a pretty nice little NVMe drive.
It looks like, unfortunately, we have lost Hunter again.
I don't know. Home internet died, looks like.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That would drive me crazy if my home internet died.
However, we will continue to forge onward.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have one last bit of Intel news, and this one is a little less tech-related, but, well... Oh. Hunter, are you back?
Ontario.
It looks like his webcam's back up at least. Regardless. So Intel, we know, has been on a hiring and poaching spree, getting talent from all across the tech sphere.
Right.
And they've been pulling people, you know, they got Raja Kaduri from the Radeon Technologies Group. They picked up Tom Peterson from Nvidia. They also picked up Chris Hook, again from AMD, Damien Triolet. Basically, Intel just continues to absorb talent for its graphics division. And this time, they pulled another AMD Radeon Group veteran, and that is Miss Heather Lennon. Now, Heather was the manager of AMD Radeon Technologies Group's Marketing and Communications Division. She had been with AMD for 10 years up to this point and had handled all of the Radeon social media, website, rebranding, community engagement, all that stuff. And so now she has been hired on as Intel's manager for their graphics division of digital marketing and graphics.
Nice.
And she will be working with another former employee, this one of NVIDIA, Mr. Mark Taylor, who is handling technical marketing for Intel's graphics division.
Wonder how they're going to get along.
We'll see. Basically,
you know, I, for one, I'm a fan of this type of movement because it shows that Intel is very serious about its commitment to creating its own graphics cores, right? They're high performance graphics cores. So, which means obviously another player in the GPU market, which we need. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens from all of this.
Indeed.
Because they've kind of segueing a bit from the article, but what they're showing off is basically grouping clusters of GPUs together and having an API that makes them appear as one to whatever graphics engine or coding is requiring GPU muscle. And if that type of architecture does well, that would be a very easy way for them to scale performance linearly. So that's a very, very cool approach, I think.
Yeah, they've talked elsewhere about their solution to the multi-GPU problem, which they call CXL, for Coherent Express Layer.
I know they've done some technical deep dives, and there's some stuff out there that people can read. It's pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah, it's probably more than we'd want to discuss on this program, especially given how long we are running already.
Right.
But there is some good information out there, and you can follow the links in the description down below to our articles that we've included for this week, which also have links to all this information we're talking about. So with that, let's move into our deals for the week. This first deal we actually featured last week as well, but it is such a good deal that I could not, when I saw that it was still available, I could not share it.
Could not
and
not.
That is the Crucial P1 1 terabyte NVMe PCIe M.2 SSD. This is a 1 terabyte SSD with 2,000 megabytes per second sequential reads and 1,700 megabytes per second sequential writes for $105. There are SATA SSDs that are more expensive and much slower than this.
Yeah.
With the same drive capacity.
That's
in all
amazing.
seriousness, if you are looking for a solid upgrade for your machine and you already have a SATA SSD, go buy this. This is worth it.
You can't beat that price point, man. I thought I was getting a good deal over the summer when I found a 1 terabyte, Samsung SATA SSD, 2.5-inch drive, right, for 150 or 180 or I forget. It was right around there, but this is insane, man. NVMe performance at 1 terabyte for $105.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Very, very hard to argue with that price. Now, I get it. Not everyone has that kind of money to throw around. Maybe you're someone on a super tight budget and you just want a boot SSD to put your operating system on so that you don't have to wait 30 minutes for your machine to boot from being turned off.
Right.
Well, I've got a deal for you as well. This one's also from Amazon. This is the PNY CS900, a 120 gigabyte, 2.5-inch SATA SSD for $20. $19.99.
Yeah, or if you're looking for a cheap drive to upgrade your mom's Facebook experience with an operating system installed, boom, there you go.
Or, maybe you have a little bit more budget and 120 gigabytes is a little bit too restrictive. The 240 gigabyte model is $37.98.
That's not bad.
And if that's still not enough space for you, the 480 gig model is $70 or $69.
I'm waiting for the 500 gig drives to come down to about $50.
Well, for some of the budget drives, you can get them in that price range. Like the Team L5 Lite is routinely between $50 and $60.
Yeah, I'm waiting for NVMe to get around 50.
That's fair.
For the 500 gig variant.
But still, if you do not have an SSD yet, if you are still running off spinning Rust, a 120 gigabyte SSD like this for $20 is one of the best and cheapest upgrades you can make for your PC.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe they're that cheap. 250 gig drives for $40 now. That's crazy. That's awesome.
And I've used PNY in my machines in the past. My laptop that I use on a daily basis is an older HP EliteBook, a 2570p, little 12-inch. It uses a PNY CS1311, which is an older variant of this same SSD. It is the 240 gigabyte version, and it is excellent.
So I was thinking of, possible things to do to generate some money. And one idea popped in my mind where you could offer repair services and different tiers. Say you had a mid tier where you offer to speed up a system, and in that $200 tier you do and then you price it at like $200. But in that tier you offer things like more RAM potentially, and a 250-ish gig SSD, virus removal, just like a general cleanup type thing, slight upgrade. And putting an SSD in that kind of a package and letting a user just use it, especially if they're coming from a hard drive. Can you imagine what kind of return business you get with that? That's just because the user is going to get the computer home, with the fresh OS install on an SSD from a hard drive, and they're going to think, wow, this is amazing. My operating system boots up in like 10 seconds. It's crazy.
Indeed.
Just talking out loud, thinking out loud. Yeah.
Not a bad thought. All right. And this last one, I debated about this one. There was a couple other models, but this one, Jason, you recommended this one. And to be honest, I kind of agree with you on this. I do like the color neutral nature of this.
Oh, yeah. The Skywalker. Yeah.
So this is a brand I've not personally heard of before, but apparently it's reviewed very well on Newegg. It is the V-Color Skywalker RAM. This is 16 gigs of DDR4 3200 for $90.
And like you're saying, I don't know anything about the brand, about this type of RAM. It's just, $90 for a kit of 3200, 16 gigs of the stuff. And it's a very neutral color, and it's very industrial looking, but kind of minimalist. And when you stack them together, it just looks good. And the reason I'm recommending it is just at the price point. I'd have to do more research. Honestly, I'm more of a fan of G-Skill right now, but for this price point, you really can't beat it.
And looking at it from, like, putting it into a motherboard and looking at it from the top, it does give that feel of the Corsair Vengeance RGB RAM with the four slanted rectangles, because that's the same kind of design that the Corsair has.
Nice.
Yeah, there is actually a variant of this same Skywalker RAM that's called the Skywalker Prism that does kind of the same thing the Vengeance LEDs do, where it has the little light bar through those ribs, for lack of a better term, to kind of RGB it up if you really want that. But you're paying about $20 more for that. Here, we're just looking at pure value for performance.
Yeah.
Right now, this is, I believe, the cheapest DDR4 3200 kit on Newegg.
Well, yeah, the 16 gig kit, yeah.
Well, for 16 gigs. You're right. I should have qualified that. This is the cheapest 16 gigabyte DDR4 3200 kit on Newegg. So if you want 16 gigs of DDR4 3200, here you go.
That's not bad. That's about $190 if you're combining that with that 1 terabyte NVMe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for roughly $195, just south of $200, you have a solid upgrade for any desktop system
Which
in recent memory.
Yeah, which like last summer you're paying $190 for a 16
That's
gig
the
kit.
RAM.
Yeah, so that's pretty awesome.
Well, with that, that's everything that's in our show notes, ladies and gentlemen. Gentlemen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I had a thought this morning. I've been reading some posts on Reddit I follow a lot of modding posts and PC building stuff, and I I've just been seeing this growing trend about how people are not recommending to build computers right now. And honestly, I can kind of see where they're coming from. A lot of them are using Intel and Nvidia parts. So from that perspective, I completely understand because prices are just beyond ridiculous for, i7s and i9s for the Z390s and the RTX tax and Nvidia's ridiculous approach with their product stack. But I thought about it for a second and I'm like, I don't really agree because Vega exists at 300 bucks, sometimes less. RX 580 is less than 200.
Hmm.
RAM is very, very inexpensive right now. SSDs are very inexpensive. There are Ryzen price cuts, which are unbelievable. Like if you look around, you can find the Ryzen 7 1700 for $160. You can find good X70 chipset motherboards that were originally 200 or down to 150 in some cases. So for 700 bucks, you can build a really nice 8-core 16-thread machine that will just tear through anything at 1080p and give you a good 1440p experience. $700. That includes the 1 terabyte NVMe drive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
16 gigs of RAM, a nice video card. I mean, you can play with your GPU budget. You can go from 700 to 1,000 somewhere in there, and go anywhere from RX 580 to like Vega 64. You can even throw in some water cooling as well if you wanted. But that's just when I think about it. Ryzen 5 2600X, a nice open loop, a Vega 56 for 1,200 bucks. That is that's really good value to me.
And if
That's
that's
like,
not in the cards for you,
yeah.
you could build a system. The system I have, it's a Ryzen 7 1800X, 32 gigs of RAM, and two RX 480s in Crossfire.
Mm-hmm.
Complete overkill.
Mm.
If you're looking to build something similar with an RX, let's say a single RX 580, half as much RAM, 16 gigs, and an R7 1700, which you could easily overclock to be equivalent to an 1800X at stock with just a couple of tweaks in the BIOS.
Mm-hmm.
You could easily create something similar to my machine, which was about a $3,000 machine. You can build that same machine today for less than $1,000.
Yeah. And it'll attack anything you throw at it. There's no workload that type of machine won't handle.
Now, are you going to have the latest ray traced everything and be able to do it at 4K 120 FPS? No. But
You're not spending $1,000 for something like that. You're spending 3,000 or 4,000 for something like that.
exactly. For a $1,000 budget, 1080p, entry level 1440p, you're golden.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't want to ramble on, but I've seen that trend lately, and I couldn't disagree with it more. So
Fair enough.
obviously I'm recommending people wait because there's a node shift coming soon, and that's the only reason. Otherwise, I would say you're crazy for waiting. But with the node shift coming soon, I'm suggesting people wait 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Could ramble on forever, but that was my thought.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Well, Hunter, anything you'd like to add?
No, just seeing what new stuff comes out. Still waiting on the new stuff in May being announced and seeing if it's going to come in July.
Yeah, that's what I'm saving for. I love my RX 480s, but they are starting to show their age.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what the RX 3000 series is going to be performance-wise.
Me too.
Yep.
Well,
especially at the proposed or rumored price point.
yeah, if they're able to
Yes, sir.
match the leaked price points, then that will be extremely disruptive.
Yeah, I would be laughing for days if they put a card out there that had, RTX 2070 level performance for 250 or $300. I would be
Yeah.
laughing for days.
Yeah.
Oh, it would completely upend the market.
Yeah, I would.
We'll have to
But
wait for that news to come.
yes, we will have to wait and see. And sadly, you all who are watching are going to have to wait for the next TechForge because we have reached the end. And if you've enjoyed everything you've seen here, of course, you can check out all our other great content on our YouTube channel. You can check out our twitch.tv channel for quality content streams 5 nights a week at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also find us on social media. You can find the links down below in the description with links to our Facebook, our Twitch, our Twitter, and our Discord community. In the meantime, remember, when life has you down, Jesus loves you, and forge on.
Forge on.